Epilogue. It had been 2 weeks since the events of NP1. The news coverage of the terrorist assault on the national government and the PowerPlants that help keep our proud nation's lights on was still top billing. The media vultures had taken to picking apart every inch of David M. Nash's background and displaying it like the carcass of a defeated enemy in a fighting pit. I think it's just sad, Mona. I mean, there are young kids out there today who are not getting the proper amount of Chembal to help their developing minds. If our healthcare system doesn't improve, those poor kids will become just like David Nash, says an eccentric and educated male voice on a news channel. I know, Reginald, the parents of today's UCA really need to make sure not to follow in the footsteps of these neglectful parents, because that's where it all starts. David Nash was born to Joyce and Michael Nash. Both did not initially use Chembal. In fact, it's been proven his father was a terrorist himself. His mother has since reformed, but the damage of her youth ruined her child's future, said another high-toned female college-educated voice. She sat there, listening to the news anchor talk about David M. Nash yet again. He was all they had been talking about. For a while, Joyce Nash wasn't even sure who David Nash was. Of course, once she saw the face on the screen, her mind was able to finally connect the dots. She was in the kitchen, the same spot she always sat with a nearly blank expression on her face as she watched the news channels cover in length the past of a man she believed might be her son. So much time had gone by since she could remember caring for someone else that she wasn't sure if that was even real or just a dream. She decided, if the man they spoke of was her son, she would be sad for him. He was handsome, based off the pictures they showed of him. She would be sad that if that was someone she gave birth to, that he had become such a villain. She wished she could have been a better mother. A single tear fell from her eye as somewhere deep down, locked away, she knew the truth. Ashley Ivy stared blankly at the monitor of the screen in her cubicle, the bell for midday Chembal dose. She numbly reached for her bottle in her purse and opened the lid. She looked down and counted. 1, 2, 3 in her head, and then took all 3 pills. She couldn't remember exactly how she came to get this job, but she knew she was the new girl. She now worked in D.C. in the accounts receiving office of a federal government office that she didn't really remember the name of. Not that it matters. The job was the same every day. Take numbers from one side of the chart on the screen and move them to the other. She thought she even enjoyed it. She couldn't remember much of what she did before, but she thought it was nerve-wracking. The laid-back style of this work never caused her stress or tension. She looked over at a small makeup mirror someone had left in the cubicle and saw her own face. Her hair was now unkempt and lifeless. She thought maybe there was a time she did stuff with it. She also saw the lines on her face had moved her physical age up by 5 years. But she didn't know why she looked older than her actual age so suddenly. A notification went off on her phone. She looked. It was a news headline announcing plans to dig deeper into the backstory of David Nash and his plot to destroy the UCA. That name made her sad. She didn't know why. But she knew whenever the news talked about the man they called David Nash, she didn't want to hear it. Maybe it was because he was such a bad person. An old-school alarm clock rang at 4:30 a.m. Jason lifted his head off his pillow and scowled at the alarm. He turned it off and sat up in his twin-size bed. The 70-year-old box fan in the room was still blaring as he slowly woke up. As he came to, he looked over at his dresser and got up to get dressed. As he stood there putting on his collar-charged station black shirt and jeans, he stared at the photos he had hanging in his 2-room apartment above the station. The photo was an older one. It was a young version of him. His best friend, Michael Nash, and the woman Michael was dating at the time, Joyce. He sighed at the sight. Were those better times? They were all so poor, angry, and resentful. Except for Joyce, her family was well off and never understood what she saw in a bad boy like Mike. He looked at the next one. It was not as old as the last one, but still old enough. It was his sister and her daughter, Anna. Anna now lived in the 2nd room of this shitty apartment with him. His sister's death and his adopting of Anna was a rough period in a lifetime of rough periods. The young girl was all the blood family he had left, and now he was in charge of her. When she found out who he was, the next of this area, she wanted into the organization. It wasn't an easy thing to allow. Even now, she wasn't even 18 yet. But Trace promised he would teach Anna to be a hacker which was a safer role to play in the game they were in. Trace, there was a name that stung when he said or thought it. Trace was a limp, loud-mouthed runt when he fell on Jason's doorstep. One bad argument away from getting iced by someone who could walk the walk, but he saw Trace for what he really was: loyal, determined, and talented in his own way. Trace was like a son over time to Jason, so when news broke that David and Trace both had been reassigned, it hit him like a brick wall. David also was a name he couldn't really think about without another layer of grief hitting him. David was the son of his best friend Mike. He looked a lot like his father had when they were young. When Mike was lost to them, he swore to Joyce before she was re-educated he would never force David into the world that took her husband away. But then, David came to him and begged to be part of something bigger. He saw a lot of Michael in David, desire to seek out the truth, to point the finger at those responsible for the wrongs of the world, and a lot of anger. Jason made his way down to the charge station back office, down some stairs from the apartment. From there, he went into the main store area, unlocked the front door, and turned on the lights. It would take people a minute to come around, so he headed back to the back office to smoke and drink some coffee to start the day. Once he sat down at his desk, he noticed a new set of folders on his desk. A post-it note on the outside marked G let him know his drummer boy Gil had dropped it off. He opened the first folder. A small thumb drive was taped inside. He pulled it out of the folder and put it into his computer. After a few minutes of loading and downloading, he realized what he was staring at. It was David and Trace's DOE job. It had taken a while to reach him, but here it was. Everything they uncovered, he sat there reading and watching for nearly 30 minutes in absolute shock. They hit a fucking gold mine, Jason thought to himself. So why did they try to hit a power plant? They had everything here. He opened the next folder. It was the same setup, except for a note attached to the thumb drive that read, "Remember the name Chief when you get ready to break this story." Jason inserted the drive. The data on this one was much larger, but it did eventually finish downloading, and he began to follow the same pattern: read and watch. What he saw blew him away. Everything in this drive changed not just how he viewed the world, but how the world would view itself. He watched till the end, where he saw David and Trace being ambushed and the cameras being disconnected, which forced him to fight back tears. Almost at once he considered deleting the files. He could barely believe what they uncovered, and maybe it was best for the world to stay oblivious. Maybe he would just walk away from this fight and take Anna with him. But then Anna came down the stairs and into the back office. She had taken Trace's death hard. Trace always saw her more like a younger sister, but Jason knew she saw Trace in a different light, as teenage girls often do with men too old for them. "Hey Jason, what's going on?" Anna asked, in a tired, moody teen voice. Jason looked back at the files, then back at Anna. "Hey kid, did Trace ever teach you how to break through media sites and news firewalls?" Jason asked. She blinked at him for a moment. "Yeah, it's pretty easy. It was the last thing he was able to show me before, you know." She trailed off, looking away. "I think I got your first job, if you're interested," Jason said. 2 days later, in the dark corners of the dark web, a highly encrypted email is sent from an unknown address to another unknown address. Original sender, timestamp 1538. The organization has made its move. Our plans must accelerate. Can you provide a team of 6 multiple extractions? Also, things changed. I need you to ID a runner for a critical operation. Reply sender, timestamp 2310. Understood. I can make the multiple extractions happen, no problem. Big guy upstairs must be listening in, because I just happen to have someone whose runner material ready to go. Original sender, timestamp 215. Is this somebody trained and ready for the task? Reply sender, timestamp 301. Trained and ready, and can be ready whenever you want them to be. Original sender, timestamp 311. Then this happens in 2 days. Have your somebody waiting at the UCA Outpost 11 in the Arctic at 0700 2 days from now. Reply sender, timestamp 313. Understood. Original sender sends out an additional 6 emails to 6 unique encrypted addresses. Only one has additional requirements of its recipient, which directed, during the event, ensure to retrieve the military-grade transport case. Use the inventory mainframe to locate subject 7722. Store 7,722 in case and evacuate. End of plant shift.